My name is David. Most people, when they look at me, they see a weak man. Timid, spineless, a joke of a husband. They're not wrong, at least not from the outside. At home, I treat my wife, Willow, like an ancestor to be worshipped. Her words are law. Her whims, my orders. Friends laugh behind my back. Neighbors whisper. Even my in-laws call me the wife's slave. And me? I smile, lower my head, and say nothing. Scene evening at home. Quiet narration with tension building. It was a rainy night when everything began to change. Willow came home late, heels clicking on the wooden floor, perfume trailing behind her. But she wasn't alone. A young man followed her inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who thinks his reflection is his best friend. Willow didn't even try to hide it. She slipped her arm through his and smiled down at me where I sat at the table, eating my soup. Willow mocking sweet. Honey, this is Chris. He'll be staying over tonight. You don't mind, do you? David calm, faint smile. Of course not. Bitter irony. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even flinch. I simply set down my spoon, nodded politely, and returned to my meal. Upstairs, I heard their laughter, the creak of the bed frame, Willow's voice. Sharp, playful, cruel. The kind of sounds meant to humiliate a man. But me, I took another sip of soup. Scene aftermath. Late night. When it was over, Chris swaggered down the stairs, one arm thrown carelessly around Willow's shoulders. He laughed. Loud. Arrogant. Like some brainless villain out of a cheap TV drama. Chris, mocking laugh. Thanks for the hospitality, man. You're one of a kind. I stood, bowed slightly, and escorted him to the door. Come again soon, I said almost respectfully. Seen Willow on the railing. Willow lingered upstairs, leaning lazily on the railing as if she were queen of the world. Her silk robe slipped from one shoulder, and her smile was careless, almost bored. Willow smirking. Honey, you could try it too, you know. Maybe find yourself a young, pretty girl. Who knows? She might even help you rise again. Inner thoughts, dark and quiet. I knew she was mocking me. I knew she loved grinding my dignity beneath her heel. But I only lowered my head and smiled faintly. Because what Willow didn't know was, the games I played were far bigger than hers. That night, as Willow slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake. The rain outside whispered against the glass, steady, patient. And in the darkness, I promised myself, this little game of hers would be the first move in something far greater. After all, a husband's cage can just as easily be a hunting ground. Chapter 2. A Cruel Invitation. Morning after, slow and heavy, the smell of coffee drifted through the kitchen. The clinking of silverware was the only sound between us. Willow sat at the head of the table, legs crossed, scrolling her phone as if nothing unusual had happened. But her lips curved into that familiar little smile, the one she wore whenever she was about to twist the knife. Willow teasing. You're awfully quiet today. She didn't look at me, didn't need to. She knew the silence was its own form of humiliation. David's thoughts. I chewed my toast carefully, slowly, letting the quiet stretch. People say silence is weakness, but sometimes silence is the loudest answer you can give. Willow mocking laugh. You know, you really surprised me last night. She finally put her phone down, leaning forward with an almost wicked gleam in her eyes. Willow. Most men would have flipped out. They'd shout, throw things, kick the guy out. But you. She shook her head, amused. Willow mocking, amused. You just sat there like a saint, like some obedient little monk, sipping your soup while I... She stopped, letting the implication hang in the air. Tension building. The words stung. Of course they did. But pain is just information. And I've always been good at learning from information. I set my cup down and looked up at her. David calm. Are you finished? Willow startled, then grinning. Oh, are you angry, monk? She laughed, short, cruel, delighted by what she thought was a crack in my composure. Willow leaning closer. Relax. I'm just saying maybe you should try it too. Go out. Find some young thing to make you feel alive again. Who knows? Her smile turned sharp. Willow, mocking whisper. Maybe she'll even make a man out of you. Turning point. There it was. The strike meant to break me. The insult meant to make me crumble. But instead, I smiled. David, softly, almost amused. You're right. Willow's reaction. Slower build. For just 1 second. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. Then, she threw her head back and laughed. Willow. Oh, this is rich. The monk grows teeth. She grabbed her bag, still chuckling, as she headed for the door. Willow over her shoulder. Fine, David. Go ahead. Find a girl. I'd love to watch you try. The door shut behind her, and the house was silent again. Internal shift, but this silence felt different. Lighter, sharper. I stood slowly, carried my plate to the sink, and smiled at my reflection in the window. David, quiet, to himself. All right, Willow, let's play. Evening, high-end bar. That night, I drove across town, away from the quiet suburbs and into the city. Neon lights reflected off wet pavement. The world here was faster, louder, hungrier. I parked in front of a place most people never notice. A quiet bar with no sign, no windows, no name. Inside, everything was dim and elegant. Low jazz playing, soft golden light, velvet booths. And the moment I stepped inside, the bartender's face lit up. Bartender, respectful, warm. Good evening, Mr. David. Your usual table. Revealing the hidden world. Here, no one mocked me. No one called me wife's slave. Here, men in expensive suits nodded when I passed. Women with diamond earrings glanced up from their cocktails, measuring me, not dismissing me. Here, I was not invisible. Private booth. I slid into my usual corner booth. Moments later, a man in a dark tailored suit approached. Marcus, one of my oldest allies. He sat across from me, loosened his tie, and smiled. Marcus measured, curious. You look like a man with something on his mind. I sipped my drink before answering. David, quiet, deliberate. My wife brought home a boy last night. Marcus raised a brow, intrigued. Marcus, slow grin. And you let her? David, smiling faintly. I escorted him to the door when they were done. Marcus laughed softly, shaking his head. Marcus, leaning forward. So, what's the play? I leaned back, letting the dim light catch the edge of my glass. David, calm, cold. She thinks I'm weak. She thinks I'll sit back and let her grind my face into the floor. So now, I'll give her what she wants. Marcus, eyes narrowing. Careful, David. If you do this, you can't half-play. She'll either learn her lesson, or you'll lose her completely. David, smiling, almost serene. Marcus, I don't half-play anything. Foreshadowing. Marcus raised his glass to me, a silent toast. And as I drank, I felt something inside me shift. Not anger, not jealousy, something sharper. Resolve. When I walked out of the bar that night, the city air was cool against my face. Neon lights glowed like chess pieces on a giant board. And I knew exactly where to place my first move. David, quiet, final line. You wanted a game, Willow? Let's make it a game you'll never forget. Because the cruelest invitation is the one you think you extended yourself. Chapter 3. Playing along. After that night, I made a decision. I would no longer resist, no longer flinch, no longer hide my humiliation. No, I would wear it, wrap it around me like a mask. Because sometimes the best way to win is to let your opponent think you've already lost. Dinner at home, playing the role. A week later, I stood in the kitchen, stirring soup just the way Willow liked it. When she came home, I was already setting the table. David, gentle. Long day. Willow, suspicious, smirking. What's this? Playing house. I smiled faintly and pulled her chair out for her. David, softly. I just thought you deserved something nice. Willow's unease. She narrowed her eyes. Willow thrived on defiance, on pushback. It was what made the game fun for her. But me being agreeable? That made her hesitate. Willow mocking, testing. What's the catch? David, innocent smile. No catch. I ladled soup into her bowl. David, gently. Actually, I was thinking about what you said. About finding a girl. Willow, brows arching. Oh? And? David, calmly. You were right. Maybe it would be good for me. Make me feel like a man again. Willow's reaction. Her lips curled into a slow grin. The kind of grin a cat wears when it sees a mouse step willingly into the trap. Willow, mocking laugh. Wow, look at you. Who is she? David, smiling faintly. I don't know yet, but I'll find someone. Willow, delighted, teasing. Good. I'd love to watch you try. Just don't bring home someone too ugly. It would be embarrassing. She laughed and went upstairs, humming. Inner thoughts. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd bent me so far that I'd finally broken. And that was exactly what I wanted her to think. David's call. Setting the trap. When the house was quiet, I stepped out onto the balcony, phone in hand. The night air was cold, sharp, it kept me focused. David, low voice. Marcus, it's time. Marcus, over phone, amused. That didn't take long. David, calm, precise. I want eyes on Chris. Where he goes, who he meets, how he spends. Everything. Marcus. Understood. Do you want him approached? I smiled faintly at the moonlit street below. David, cold, patient. Not yet. Let him dig his own grave first. Chris's world begins to shift. The next few days, Chris started receiving mysterious messages, invitations to exclusive parties, VIP events, places that would make a man like him feel important. We see him grinning as he puts on his nicest shirt, taking selfies in front of sports cars that weren't his. We see him drinking with strangers, bragging, basking in the glow of attention. David's quiet observation. I didn't have to do much, just open a few doors. Men like Chris always walk through them on their own. And the farther he walked, the more rope he gave me to hang him with. At home, Willow still gloating. That weekend, Willow was dressing up for another date night with Chris. She twirled in front of the mirror, smiling at herself. Willow teasing. You should thank me, you know. At least I keep you from being bored. I adjusted my tie in silence, then turned to her with a faint smile. David, quiet, calm. You're right, Willow. Life would be very dull without you. She laughed, not hearing the edge in my voice, not realizing she had just stepped one square deeper onto my board. Later that night, as Willow left with Chris, I sat alone at the kitchen table. Phone in hand, I opened a message from Marcus. He's biting. Hook set. I smiled and put the phone down. David, to himself, quiet. Good boy, Chris. Let's see how far you can swim. The game was no longer about enduring humiliation. It was about control, about patience. And soon, Willow wouldn't just be laughing at me. She'd be begging me to save her. Chapter 4. The Trap Tightens. Traps don't work because they're fast. They work because they're patient. You set them carefully, wait quietly, and let the prey walk in on its own. And Chris was running headfirst into mine. Scene, Chris's descent. Cinematic montage. In the following weeks, I watched from the shadows as Marcus fed him opportunity after opportunity. Private poker games. VIP club tables with champagne flowing like water. Businessmen slapping him on the back, calling him brother. Chris ate it all up. He borrowed money to keep up appearances, bought a watch he couldn't afford, and bragged to Willow about how he was moving up in the world. Seen Willow's excitement. Willow loved it. She'd come home glowing, bags of expensive clothes on her arms. Willow excited, laughing. You should see him, David. He knows everyone now. It's like dating a celebrity. David, smiling faintly. Impressive. David's thoughts. I kept my tone neutral, my smile soft. Let her think I was admiring him. Let her think she was winning. Seen Marcus calls with an update. One night, my phone buzzed. Marcus's voice was low, amused. Marcus on phone. He's overextended. Owes 3 different guys money plus interest. Still betting like he's rich. How far you want me to push? David, calm. Not too far yet. Make sure he keeps winning just enough to stay hooked. Marcus, chuckling. You always did like to take your time. Scene: Chris at a party, losing control. We cut to Chris at another private party. Laughing too loud, drinking too much, leaning too hard into his new identity. Someone whispers an opportunity in his ear. A chance to invest, to make big money. He agrees without hesitation. By the end of the month, Chris owed more money than he could ever pay back. But he still strutted around like he was untouchable. And Willow, she still thought he was her golden boy. Scene: home, Willow teasing David again. One Saturday morning, Willow came downstairs humming, looking pleased with herself. Willow mocking. So, did you find yourself a girl yet, Monk? I looked up from my book, smiling faintly. David calmly. I've been talking to someone. Willow grinning. Oh really? Tell me about her. I let a pause stretch, then shrugged lightly. David softly. She's patient, and she likes playing games as much as I do. Willow blinked at me, confused for just a moment, before laughing and shaking her head. Willow amused. You're getting weird, David. Inner thoughts. Darker. No, Willow. Not weird. Focused. Scene: Chris starts to sweat. 2 days later, Marcus sent me a video. Chris shouting at someone in a dark parking lot, shoving them when they asked for payment. He wasn't laughing anymore. Marcus, text message. He's on edge. If you want him desperate, we're close. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed one word back. Push. Scene: the breaking point. That night, Chris showed up at Willow's house. His face pale, his confidence cracked. Chris urgent. Babe, I need cash. Just for a week or two. I'm good for it, I swear. Willow frowned, confused. Willow, what happened? Chris snapping. Nothing. Okay? Just, I'm in a bind. Help me out. She glanced at me nervously. I closed my book slowly and stood. David calm, polite. How much do you need? Chris glared at me like a cornered animal. Chris, this is between me and Willow. David smiling faintly. And Willow's money is my money. So, how much? He hesitated, then muttered the number. It was high, far higher than Willow expected. Willow shocked. Chris, what the hell are you into? He didn't answer, just looked at me, waiting. I nodded slowly. David softly. All right, I'll take care of it. Chris blinked in surprise. He'd expected me to argue, to refuse, to mock him. But I smiled as I patted his shoulder. David quietly with weight. You'll owe me. He nodded reluctantly, not realizing the true cost of what he'd just agreed to. And Willow, she stood frozen, watching me with a look I hadn't seen before. Not amusement, not contempt, but something closer to fear. The trap was no longer just for Chris. It was closing around Willow too. And neither of them had any idea how deep it went. Chapter 5, Cracks in the Throne. Power doesn't just change hands overnight. It slips piece by piece until one day you look up and realize the crown is gone. Willow didn't know it yet, but hers was already slipping. Scene: the morning after Chris's plea. At breakfast, the house was quiet. Willow didn't hum, didn't smirk, didn't taunt me like she usually did. She just sat there, staring at her coffee, lost in thought. David calmly. You didn't sleep well. She blinked, startled. Willow defensive. I'm fine. David soft smile. Good, because we'll need to be sharp today. I have a meeting with Chris. Willow's unease. That made her look up. Willow narrowing her eyes. What are you planning to do? David calmly. Help him. Didn't you ask me to? She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my expression. But all I gave her was that same faint, unshakable smile. Scene: Chris at the meeting. Later that afternoon, I met Chris in a quiet cafe. He looked worse than before. Pale, sweating, jaw tight. Chris low voice. Thanks for covering me last night. I'll pay you back. David softly. I know you will. He frowned, clearly bristling at my calm tone. Chris, so what do you want? I slid an envelope across the table. David measured. A job. He hesitated, glaring. Chris' bitter laugh. You're joking. You think I'm gonna work for you? David quietly, leaning forward. I think you already are. Because every man who owes me money works for me, whether he realizes it yet or not. Chris's defeat. He swallowed hard, the bravado draining from his face. And for the first time he nodded. Chris quietly. What do you need me to do? David smiling faintly. Nothing difficult. Just errands. Introductions. A little loyalty. Scene Willow overhears. That evening, Willow heard me on the phone. My voice low, calm, issuing instructions to someone she couldn't see. Her footsteps slowed on the stairs. I could feel her standing there in the dark, listening. David into phone, cool. Yes, he'll be there tomorrow. Make sure he's given a seat but no credit. If he wants to play, he plays with his own cash from now on. I hung up and turned slowly toward the stairwell. David evenly. You can come down, Willow. She froze, then descended slowly, trying to mask her unease. Willow careful. You're really involved in this. David calm. I told you I'd help your boyfriend. Willow snapping. He's not. I raised an eyebrow and she cut herself off. David softly. You brought him into this house, Willow. Into our marriage. That makes him our problem. Willow's shift. For the first time since we were married, Willow didn't have a quick comeback. She just stared at me, and I saw it, the smallest flicker of something new in her eyes. Fear. Seen Chris working for David. Over the next week, Chris became mine in every way that mattered. He delivered messages, made appearances at meetings, followed every instruction I gave him because he had no choice. Marcus, smirking. He's starting to look up to you. Careful, boss. He might start calling you mentor. I smiled faintly. David coldly. Good. Let him. The deeper he trusts me, the harder it will break when I pull the rug out. Scene Willow sees Chris changed. One evening, Willow found Chris sitting quietly in the living room, no longer the cocky boy who laughed at me from the stairs. He stood when I entered, respectful, almost deferential. Chris nodding. Evening, David. Willow looked between us, unsettled. Willow nervous laugh. What's going on with you two? David calm, smiling. Business. And just like that, the dynamic had changed. Chris was no longer hers. He was mine. And Willow was starting to realize, maybe she had been mine all along. The cracks in her throne were widening. And soon, there would be nothing left for her to sit on. Chapter 6. The tables turn. Some lessons can be taught with words. Others require demonstration. And for Willow to understand exactly what game we were playing, she needed to see the board, and all the pieces on it. Seen the invitation. One evening, as Willow was scrolling through her phone, I slid a crisp envelope across the table. Willow suspicious. What's this? David softly. An invitation. Dinner. Tomorrow night. Bring Chris. She frowned, confused. Willow, you want to have dinner with him? Together. David calm smile. I think it's time we all sat at the same table. Willow's unease. She didn't argue, but I could see the tension in the way she twisted the envelope in her fingers. Scene the dinner venue. The next night, we arrived at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. A place Willow had only ever seen in magazines. Velvet curtains, crystal chandeliers, quiet music playing on a grand piano. A waiter in a black suit greeted me by name. Waiter bowing slightly. Mr. David, your table is ready. I caught Willow's quick glance, the first spark of doubt crossing her face. Scene the table of power. We were led to a private room. Marcus was already there, along with two other men. Sharp suits, cold eyes, the kind of presence that made the air feel heavier. And Chris stood when I entered, nodding respectfully. Chris measured. Boss. Willow blinked. Willow whispering. Boss. I pulled out her chair, smiling faintly. David calmly. Sit, Willow. Dinner's about to begin. The meal, slow build tension. The waiters brought course after course. Rare wine, exquisite dishes. The men at the table deferred to me, listening when I spoke, laughing when I allowed them to. Chris barely touched his food, too busy keeping his posture straight, answering when spoken to, trying not to offend. And Willow stayed very, very quiet. Scene. Conversation turns sharp. Halfway through the meal, Marcus leaned back, smiling. Marcus casual. Chris has been proving himself lately. He's useful. Smart. Chris flushed slightly, murmuring a thanks. David calm, almost amused. Useful is the right word. I looked at Chris, letting the silence stretch. David soft, deliberate. Tell Willow what you said to me yesterday. Chris swallowed hard, then nodded. Chris quiet. I said I owe you everything now. Willow stiffened, her fingers curling around her wine glass. David leaning back, smiling. And he's right. He owes me money, time, loyalty. I turned to Willow, meeting her eyes. David soft but cutting. Which means, Willow, the man you brought into this marriage, now works for me. Willow's realization. Her face went pale. For a moment she looked like she might laugh, might dismiss it all as some elaborate joke. But then she saw Chris. How he avoided her gaze. How he sat straighter in his chair, waiting for my approval. And the laughter died in her throat. Scene. David's toast. I raised my glass, smiling faintly. David smooth, calm. To new partnerships. And to the ones who made them possible. My eyes lingered on Willow as I drank. Power shift complete. The room was silent except for the soft clink of crystal. 4 years, Willow had been the queen, and I the quiet servant. But tonight, she saw the truth. The crown had passed, and I hadn't even raised my voice to take it. Scene. After dinner. Private confrontation. Later, in the parking lot, Willow finally snapped. Willow, furious whisper. What the hell was that? You humiliated me. I leaned against the car, smiling faintly. David, quietly. No, Willow. I educated you. Willow, angry, desperate. You think this makes you a man? Controlling him? Controlling me? I stepped closer. So close she had to look up at me. David, low voice. This was never about being a man. This is about who holds the leash. I opened the car door for her and gestured inside. David, soft. Final. Get in. She hesitated, then obeyed. The balance in our marriage had shifted completely. And for the first time in years, I felt free. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because once the tables turn, there's no going back. Chapter 7, Checkmate. Some games end quietly. Some end with fireworks. But the best games end with silence. The kind of silence where the loser finally realizes they were never even playing. Scene. The morning after the dinner. The house was still. Willow sat at the kitchen table, robe around her shoulders, hair unkempt, staring at nothing. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. David, calmly. You're quiet this morning. She looked at me, eyes sharp. Willow, flatly. You've changed. David, small smile. No, Willow. You just never bothered to look closely before. She flinched slightly, then looked away. The last move begins. I let the silence stretch until it was unbearable. Then I reached into my jacket and placed a small black folder on the table. David, softly. Everything Chris owes me is here. Debts, contracts, recordings. She hesitated before opening it, and when she did, her breath caught. Scene. The revelation. Inside were photos. Chris at card tables. Chris taking envelopes of cash. Chris in my office, head bowed. And at the very back, a document bearing Chris's signature. David, quietly. Chris belongs to me, Willow. And by extension, so do you. Willow, voice shaking. This is insane. You planned this. David, soft laugh. Planned? No. I just stopped getting in my own way. Stopped pretending to be the man you wanted me to be. And became the man I actually am. David's transformation made clear. Her lip trembled. Not from anger this time, from fear. And for the first time since the day we married, I saw the real Willow. Not the queen. Not the tormentor. Just a woman who realized she had lost everything. Seen the final blow. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. David cold. Final. You wanted a husband who bowed to you, who let you walk all over him. But that man is gone. From now on, you live under my roof. On my terms. Or you don't live here at all. Willow whispering. You wouldn't dare. I turned, meeting her eyes, smiling faintly. David low, calm. Try me. The endgame. The house felt different after that morning. Quieter. Sharper. Chris stopped coming by unless I summoned him. Willow stopped mocking me. Stopped smiling those careless smiles. She had finally learned who held the leash. One night, I sat alone on the balcony, looking up at the stars. David softly to himself. In the end, Willow was right. A young, pretty girl did help me rise again. Her name just happened to be Power. And just like that, the game was over. But the man who once played the servant, he wasn't coming back. Ever. Slow fade to black. One last line on screen. Never underestimate the quiet ones.